За моей спиной находится колония К-3 «Полярный волк», где 16 февраля погиб мой сын, Алексей Навальный. 5-й день я не могу увидеть его, мне не выдают его тело, и мне даже не говорят, где он находится. Я обращаюсь к вам, Владимир Путин. Решение вопроса зависит только от вас. Дайте мне, наконец, увидеть моего сына. Я требую незамедлительно выдать тело Алексея, чтобы я могла его по-человечески похоронить.
Vladimir Putin has promoted a prison official accused of torturing Alexei Navalny during his final days in the Siberian jail. Prison Service's chief, Valery Boyarinev, was awarded the military rank of Colonel General on Monday, just 3 days after Navalny died in the bleak polar wolf penal colony. Boyarinev was revealed to have ordered a reduction in Navalny's food rations 8 months ago and has been called Putin's curator of torture by human rights campaigners. He was among several senior staff promoted in the wake of Navalny's sudden death in what appears to be a sinister reward by Kremlin chiefs. Navalny's spokesman has called the move a personal reward for torture and murder from Putin. The news broke as Navalny's family learned his body will not be released for at least 2 weeks in a move his wife, Yulia, claims is to allow traces of Novichok poison to melt away. Mum of 2, Yulia, directly accused Putin of ordering the murder of her husband in a video addressed to his 6 million YouTube followers on Monday.
3 дня назад Владимир Путин убил моего мужа Алексея Навального. Путин убил отца моих детей. Путин отнял самое дорогое, что у меня было, самого близкого и самого любимого человека.
Human rights group Gulagu.net, which highlights Russian jail abuse, said Boyarinev was, in quotes, curator of torture, conveyors and special measures against Alexei Navalny and thousands of Ukrainian prisoners. It also described him as an experienced sadist and an executive executioner. At least 3 other senior staff at the prison service governing Siberia's grim polar wolf penal colony have also been given job boosts in recent days. Meanwhile, a crackdown was ordered on nationwide protests over Navalny's death ahead of the forthcoming presidential election in which Putin has blocked all effective opposition. Russian sources have also suggested Navalny's body may not be returned to his family until after the election to prevent further funeral demos.
My immediate thought when I learned about Navalny's death is who's next among Putin's biggest critics. And of course, my first thought was Vladimir Kara-Murza, who is another prominent Russian human rights advocate. He used to work with Boris Nemtsov. His health is in terrible condition, and so that was my immediate thought. This is far from the first time this has happened. And again, this is more of a practice in Russia. When we think back to the Beslan hostage siege in the early years of Putin's tenure, where a group of terrorists had taken a school hostage, it was actually the Russian military that opened fire on Russian children, on hostages. And it was the Russian military mishandling of the hostage crisis that led to the deaths of so many children. It's a horrific tragedy that is still seared in the memory of many in Russia. And afterwards, Vladimir Putin awarded officers who were involved in that, what I guess you might call it a botched up rescue operation. The tragedy of what we've observed since last Friday is, again, nothing is new. We're not surprised, but it is an outrage. Unfortunately, if we look at how Putin has treated Navalny, recall that he's never even acknowledged him by his name. What's happening now with refusing to give his body to his mother is also, again, not surprising. So I think we can expect more of the same. In terms of how this tragedy affects the future, well, one thing to think about is what's going to happen to the American Wall Street Journal correspondent who is now in jail. how is this situation going to develop? There was a German tourist who was also taken prisoner in Russia several weeks ago, and I apologize. I think I misspoke. I meant to say Wall Street Journal journalist who is imprisoned, not held hostage. Putin had hinted in very broad strokes in his interview with Tucker Carlson something to the effect about a possible prisoner exchange. So the question is, what kind of an exchange are we going to see? Is this going to be something akin to the exchange for Victor Bout, who was a known convicted criminal responsible indirectly for deaths of many Americans? That particular exchange, unfortunately, taught Putin's regime the wrong lesson. So what are we going to see with this situation going forward with Americans who are now in Russian jails? Again, Navalny himself was poisoned before and survived by a narrow margin. Similarly, other Putin critics like Vladimir Putin were also poisoned and survived virtually by a miracle. So we don't know, but absolutely that there could be that evidence hidden, and that could be one reason why the authorities are not releasing his body. The bigger issue we need to remember here is who ultimately bears the responsibility, and the responsibility ultimately lies within Putin himself. This can't be something that you just chalk up to a junior officer taking initiative. The message seems to be pretty clear, and that is, if you oppose Putin, you are going to die. You're going to be tortured, you're going to be imprisoned, and eventually you will die. And therefore, there's why would you attempt to oppose Putin in any way? Frankly, another question here is, how much of a threat was Navalny really to Putin's regime, having already been jailed? I think it's highly unlikely that a wave of popular uprising was going to necessarily out Putin. So the sheer cruelty of this act, that you can get killed even if it serves no purpose other than to scare, is another message. This is not a real election. Nobody seriously expects anyone other than Putin to emerge as the winner. All real opposition was silenced, put in jail. And when we think about what happened with Putin's invasion of Ukraine, those who had opposed the war have left the country. And certainly there were protests, but so many Russian citizens have fled. How serious was Navalny really? How much of a serious threat Navalny was? From a sense of a popular uprising, I don't think he was. Another possible explanation is simple, pure revenge. Because when we look at who among Putin opposition has been killed, all of these individuals have participated in a massive protests that shook Russia in 2010, 2011 against Putin. These were anti-Putin protests, and those really did raise the possibility that his regime might fall. Some observers had suggested that could happen. And Putin directly blamed the US State Department for instigating these protests. So I think pure revenge could have been potentially another motivation, and that is a message also in and of itself. When you have a regime like that that lives in a complete denial of reality and presents a very specific face, a very specific picture, both to its own domestic audience and abroad, of course, he's not going to admit any wrongdoing.